Hello, everyone. Happy Monday, second episode of the new year, and I have a familiar face with me. As you can see, Tyrina is back. It wouldn't be a Maximize Monday in 2024 if I didn't have Tyrina join me at least once a month. I think that's usually what we aim to do. Holidays made it a little tricky on us, but doing something a little different this time through. You've probably, if you've been following the show, you know Tyrene and I have talked about a few different things throughout the times that she's joined me, and we've done interview prep before, but just kind of scratched the surface with that, like we always say with any of the episodes that we do. This is just kind of a glimpse of the information that we can give you. So decided to do something a little different this time and are doing an actual, call it like a mock interview of someone applying for a role in ed tech, in sales development, that type of position. So for this specific practice, I will be acting as the interview since that's what I do. And Irina will be the candidate since she is used to helping candidates prep for these types of things. So both working towards our expertise here. So for this specific role, I just chose a generic sales development rep for an ed tech company. So a lot of the things that we would be looking for is just someone that's going to be able to develop strategies, execute those, how we can take the technology that we want to implement into schools and kind of sell the people making those decisions on why this would be best practice. Speak to how it's going to be kind of user friendly for the educators, because that's one of the main things anyone's going to be looking for is make life easier and not more difficult. So how can
Yep.
you do that? How can you speak to your experience in terms of the technology that you've used, that you've implemented, and kind of turn that into building blocks there? So for the instances of this role, I will be the hiring manager, just kind of going over the questions that I would ask in terms of someone who is focusing on a position in sales development. And for this role, Tyrene, I will let you explain kind of what your position is, the type of candidate that you will be kind of assisting or being in this role.
Yep. So when answering the questions that you'll ask, I'm taking the approach of someone who has a background, of course, is a transitioning educator, but has a K to 12 background experience, also has adult learning or training experience, and is heavily involved with the technology integration at her current school. So I just chose someone who has experience working at a middle school, working at a high school, and they are a lead teacher at their current school that they're at now.
All right, perfect. So these questions that I'm asking that Tyrene is answering are just some examples of what you might see. We're not going to dive into it. I'm not going to ask about, what do you teach and why do you love it? Why are you looking to make the change? Those are questions that you should probably prepare for and be ready to answer, but those are going to be based more on you than anything else. So this is more a glimpse of how you can prepare for the types of questions. So diving into the interview here, thank you for taking the time, of course, to speak with me and discuss the open role. So one of the first things I want to kind of go into with you as someone in education, how do you integrate technology currently in your role as an educator to kind of enhance the traditional teaching methods as we continue to evolve how students take in information?
Yeah, so at my current position, as far as integrating technology, I try to focus on creating a blend between the traditional teaching and the digital teaching as well, or digital innovations and enhancements that we've done to the curriculum. So, for instance, at my previous school, I worked at a middle school and I initiated the use of those smart boards, which are really cool. The kids love that. And just tapping into that, I just remember us using those overhead projectors,
Mhm.
back when we were in school. So, I mean, that alone tells you how far we have come,
Yeah.
in technology with the smart boards. They really, really love that. But this allowed the teachers to present a dynamic content and create like a interactive maps and live polls and making the classroom a lot more engaging than what it usually is. We've also experimented with a flipped classroom model, so students would watch videos, instructional videos at home, and then apply the concepts in class, which was really cool because everyone had like a different concept.
Mhm.
But this caused us to be able to do like group discussions and like hands-on activities. So this enforced not only learning, but it catered to the differentiated learning, like the different learning styles that each of the either teachers and the students have.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Now, as I'm sure you're aware doing the research that you did into a sales development role in ed tech, you're not just going to be in sales development. You're going to ask as the end user experience, the subject matter expert. You kind of get to do everything. So, with that being said, can you speak to a time where you successfully implemented some form of technology into either a previous role, a lesson plan, just kind of showcasing how you embrace that technology and got buy-in from your students?
Yeah. So one of my most successful implementations was introducing a more comprehensive learning management system, LMS. Um, and this platform transformed how teachers delivered the content and interacted with the students. So there is this one instance, for example, a history teacher that I worked with, they created an interactive timeline like with historical events,
Mhm.
which the students they could explore it at their own pace, of course, because everyone's at a different pace. But when we used LMS, it provided insightful like analytics on the students' performance, and it caused us to be able to have that approach where we could tailor the support for each of the students. And I feel like that's really important, as far as like implementing the technology for that purpose. Because again, when we do these standardized testing, students are coming up with all different types of scoring. And it's important for us to really hone in on the different ways that the students learn. Um, and it was really really successful. It helped us to figure out if we needed to make small learning groups, if we needed to take some students out and focus more on the how they approached technology and how they understood and how they got their information and retained information as far as what they were learning. So that's like the number one thing that I would think about when I worked with a history teacher, a fellow history teacher of mine.
Okay. Now, obviously, you've been in the classroom for some time. You're no stranger to teaching students on specific uses of technology, lesson plans, things like that. But now in this role, you're going to kind of take a broader approach and you're actually going to be teaching the teachers. So, what strategies would you use to ensure that you're providing adequate training for these new education technologies to the teachers that at times might be combative to change of what they're already accustomed to?
Yeah, and that, I mean, and you mentioning that I've been in, education for some time now with all the roles that I've had, it is definitely it's key to have an effective training so that no matter how long that you've been in education, that they adopt the new technology well. And usually with the more seasoned teachers, it's hard for them to adapt to change. So for example, like in my previous role, I organized a series of workshops and introduced teachers to new tools, that were more hands-on and more stress-free. We try to implement technology that will not cause more work for the teachers, but help them. Because we already have a lot of work grading and making sure that all of the students are in alignment with the standard of the school district. But I feel that the workshops really really helped, and I feel like having that strategy as the approach, I was able to be a little bit more intricate with each of the teachers if they were having difficulties with adapting to the new technology. I was able to take notes on who I probably needed to meet with more hands-on, or maybe like have an extra session.
Mhm.
um, we also established a mentor program, where the more like tech savvy teachers supported the other teachers. So this peer-to-peer approach not only eased the learning curve, but it also fostered like a collaborative spirit among the tasks, I mean, among the staff. So I feel like those two strategies really, really helped. Like it's a group effort. It's not, all on one person, even though I was the lead as far as the workshop. I feel that me being able to delegate certain teachers to teachers that needed more time, it really, really helped with creating a more streamlined process so that we were all on board at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So let's kind of focus now because as you're working in ed tech, you're not just going to, like I mentioned, you're not just doing the sales development. You're going to be kind of wearing multiple hats, and one of those will be at times being in almost like a tech support type of role, especially when you're doing the initial demos or the initial conversations with the people making those decisions. So technology is great until it isn't. You know, we all have those instances where it's just not working. And if you're
Yeah.
in front of a classroom of 20 kids and the lesson plan that you have is all centered around this technology, you're kind of in panic mode. So can you discuss a situation where that happened, where you had to either troubleshoot yourself a technology or a technical issue, or walk a student through a technical issue that they were having and provide resolution?
Yes, I have a perfect example of it. um, with one thing that we were doing, it involved we had to get our because we do have like an IT department. A server had crashed during one of the online exams that we were giving, and that was that was uh that was really memorable.
Mhm.
So I always have the IT team on like speed dial. I have their information quickly. What I also do too is I let them know that we're using a certain technology or we're doing exams so that I know what their availability is to assist us. Like just in case I do call and I'm not getting anybody, I always hope I'm like, well, I hope it's not your lunchtime,
Right.
just in case I have to get in contact with you. Because we do have it's a small IT team, it's only a couple of guys. So anyway, I quickly coordinated with the IT team to figure out what the issue was while simultaneously setting up an alternative testing process. I always have like those backup based exams, the paper based exams.
Mhm.
Um, but there were other teachers who were doing this exam as well. And you could tell that the server went down all at one time because all the teachers ran to the hallway and were like, what just happened?
Yes, ma'am.
So in that instance, communication definitely was key. And me being the teacher's lead, everyone was coming to me. So I kept the teachers and the students and also the parents informed because I know that the kids would go home and say, oh my gosh, mom or dad, we had this online exam today and we couldn't even do it the way we wanted to. So we had to switch to paper. I hope I did okay still. So we had to make sure that we still had that communication with the parents as well. But it helped manage the expectations and reduce anxiety. And what we did was we decided to do it again another day.
Mhm.
So that they still got that experience of taking an online exam because I feel like that is what the world is now. It's not so much paper all the time. So we still wanted them to have that experience, whether they did well the paper test or not.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Great example there. So now, as I'm sure you know, in any type of sales position, you're not going to walk in and just kind of say this is what we have to offer, and the people just buy it, no questions asked. And that especially is going to be more challenging when it comes to working with different districts because budgets come into play and different funding is going to be allocated towards different services and things that the school district can use. So how would you address the challenges that come with incorporating technology in very diverse learning environments across the country?
Yeah. I at one of the school districts that I worked with, it was very diverse. But I'll give an example. The school that I worked at, we had students with various backgrounds and abilities. So what we did was we tackled this by ensuring that the technology we implemented was versatile and accessible. So then when we were teaching the teachers about the technology, they understood that it was going to serve their student population. And because a lot of times we get some hesitation on implementing new things, especially with a new school district or school that we haven't worked with before.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, at the schools that I have been at, of course, we always test things within the school district. We test it at our school, and then we suggest maybe to the board or administration, like, hey, because we have a website where we can look at the test scores or how the other students are doing in other schools.
Mhm.
And I was really heavily involved with that. I would visit other schools and, talk to teachers about that. I also know teachers personally that work at other schools in the district. But what we did was we made sure that everyone understood that because of the diverse population of students and their abilities and backgrounds they have, that this one technology was going to serve that entire district and the entire population. So, for example, we chose a software that was compatible with various devices because that's a hard thing. It figuring out something that works with everything that you already have is a challenge.
Right.
Because you don't want to have to update everything. You just want to implement one thing.
That'll be a quick no from
Um,
the board.
yeah, right. So we made sure that the software that we were using was compatible with various devices, and offer multiple languages and also learning age because we have a lot of non-English speaking students as well.
Mhm.
And then just making sure that with the students and with the teachers that we got regular feedback. We had regular feedback sessions. So the teachers would maybe do like a survey or something with the kids as far as seeing how they felt about the new software that we were implementing. And most of the time they love it because I mean
Yeah.
this generation of kids, they love new technology, they love
Right.
learning new things.
Yeah.
um, and then we would have feedback back sessions with the teachers so that they can say like what the students were saying.
Mhm.
um, and then we would just discuss, if we need to make any improvements or like just do a different strategy of implementing the technology. But doing things this way really was effective.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds like it. So let's build on that a little bit more because, like I had said, when you're walking in to make your pitch to whoever is going to make the decision on this, you give your pitch. They're not just like, that was great. Here's a check. They're going to have questions, and part of that is going to be, the analysis, the research that you've done to kind of support the growth that your technology is going to offer the district. So thing a lot of people don't necessarily think of all the times is that teachers have to do that constantly. You're constantly looking for, ways that you can stay ahead. If it's new textbooks, if it's educational trips. And when you do that, again, you don't just go to the principal, say, I want to take 30 kids to this museum, and they say,
Right.
there's the bus. You have to show the research that you've done to prove that.
Yeah.
So can you walk me through a time where you presented that research, that data analysis to show positive educational outcomes for what you were requesting?
Yeah, and let me just say this before I give my answer. I would try to make sure that it was budget friendly with whatever I tried to do.
The
Because I
data.
know the budget is tight and I'm just like, this is going to be so good. So, all right. So, um, one of the previous schools that I was at, it was about, I'm gonna say about 5, 6 years ago. Um, I led a project that utilized the data that I found to enhance student learning. So what we did was we analyzed the data from various assessments to identify like those learning gaps.
Mhm.
Because I mean, every year we have learning gaps with certain things that we're doing. So based on what we found, we developed customized lesson plans and interventions.
Mhm.
But I feel like with doing it that way, with this data driven approach, it resulted in significant improvement. And I'm telling you, like, even though this was like 5, 6 years ago, I've been doing it every year since. And I really stay in communication with the teachers to make sure that they're doing it. We have to improve the strategy of how we're doing it. But the particular subjects that really improved with the students was math and science.
Okay.
Because that seems to be kind of like a struggle for most of the students in our district. And so making sure that we were consistent with doing that because of the data that I collected on my own and the data that I found from other school districts using it, it was really effective and it really helped.
Okay. All right. Now there's still some more layers to unravel here as we're doing this research and the analysis. So, what considerations do you think are very important to be taken into account when you're selecting educational software for your classroom, for your school? What are some of the things that you as an educator look for that you would try to speak to when you're making that pitch and saying these are some of the benefits that are going to come along with implementation of this?
Yeah. Well, the number one thing, it needs to be user friendly.
Mhm.
Whether you are tech savvy or not, it needs to be user friendly, because if we're choosing something that isn't, even with the most tech savvy person, it will take longer to explain the software to the students. We're trying to, again, make things more streamlined, faster, make the job of the educator more easier.
Mhm.
You know, our job is already hard enough. So, but when you are selecting the right educational software, it's important to align the software with our educational objectives and curriculum. So we're making sure that whatever we're really trying to work on improving that year, whatever objectives that we just met the year before, and we really want to score higher, we really try to focus on that. So of course, being user friendly for the teachers as well as the students. But for example, um, like a reading app. When I worked with younger students, I work with older students now, or teachers that work with older students. The reading app, what I did was I prioritized the intuitive navigation and the engaging content. We all know with younger students, their attention span is really, really short.
Mhm.
So you have to make sure that you are hitting the mark right away with whatever technology they're using. And a lot of the students, as far as young students, I mean, they really grasp onto things quickly because their brains are like sponges at that age.
Mhm.
Um, but a lot of them have like iPads and tablets and stuff like that. So they're quick on their feet with learning new technology. But again, we still want it to be user friendly. So making sure that we prioritize the navigation and the content that was engaging. Um, Also, data security and privacy settings are non-negotiable, especially with dealing with children's information, you know, their names and ages and stuff like that. So you want to make sure that we're taking that into account as well. Like not too much information. We're not putting like your address or anything on there like that, but normally they'll have their name and their age, you know. And then again, going back to it being cost effective. So, you know, cost effectiveness and after sales support are important factors to ensure sustainable implementation as well.
Absolutely. So the last question that I have then for you is, as an educator and in any job, really, you kind of can at times fall into that trap where you use the services, the software, the systems that are available to you. You've learned them, you know them, it's comfortable, it's familiar, and you don't really kind of do too much else because what you have is already working. So how do you
Mhm.
personally try to just stay up to date on any new developments in ed tech or otherwise, just in terms of what's going to make your life as an educator easier that you can possibly request it as a means to implement?
Yeah, so with the position that I have now as lead teacher, and with my background, you know, with K to 12, what I do is I now have a schedule where I can set aside a day every week to for professional development. So what I'll do is I'll try to participate in like educational webinars or attend conferences, whether they're virtual or in person, because we do have some conferences that we have here a couple times a year. And then I also engage with online forums as well, especially on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
LinkedIn is a major resource for getting information. I also on LinkedIn, speaking of LinkedIn, I like to follow a lot of the educational technology companies.
Mhm.
Whenever they're implementing something new or they have a new product, I have my notifications on, you know, to be the first to know, one of the first to know.
Mhm.
Um, Actually, too, and speaking about, you know, technology and how it's growing, I've recently completed a course on AI in education.
Very nice.
AI is a major thing going on right now.
Yeah.
So I completed a course on that recently, which provided some really cool information, like some fresh insights into the personalized learning technologies. They're making some really, really uh, positive steps in incorporating AI. You know, it's something that we're not going to ever get away from. You know, AI is pretty much taken over,
Mhm.
um, and so I want to make sure that I stay up to date on that, so I can give my team, at me as lead teacher, give the other teachers, some insights on what's going on with education right now.
Perfect. Perfect. So those were the questions that we had discussed. I know sometimes if you've watched the show, I throw a curveball out there. Not going to do that this time and put Tyler on the spot
Right.
on a random question that we didn't prepare for. But those are the types of questions that you should be prepared for. They're not always going to be the same, and you can expect some more personal ones to kind of focus on your career development, what you enjoy about the position. Obviously, be prepared to ask questions as well as you're going into the interviews as well. But before we wrap up here, Tyrene, is there anything that you want to add in terms of other things, insight that you would encourage people, not just for ed tech positions and interviews, but in general, things that they can do to be prepared going in?
Absolutely. I mean, always do research on the company, see what type of products and services they offer, whether it's an ed tech company or it's a corporate company, nonprofit. You want to know what their audience is, because that's how you need to base your answers.
Mhm.
And as you can see, the format of how I answered the questions, I answered the questions, or I gave a little, a little statement before I got into my example.
Mhm.
But I had an example
Yeah,
for every question.
absolutely.
And that is the best way to, answer these behavioral questions, because you have to show proof that you've been in certain situations and can handle it.
Mhm.
Whenever an interviewer is interviewing you with those behavioral questions, they're looking for what the situation is, what the task was, the action, and the result, the STAR method. I
Mhm.
live by it every time I coach my clients. We live by it until another method is created. I've created my own methods. Of course, I mix it in with the STAR method, but that is just the best strategy to go with when you're answering these questions. And I will say this: if you feel that you're back with the questions that you're preparing for, if you don't feel like you have a good example, just think about what a small piece of your experience that you can elaborate on and grow from.
Mhm.
Always be honest. If you don't make up hypotheticals, don't make up questions, I mean, don't make up answers.
Right.
um, it is a lot easier to speak authentically.
Mhm.
So if you don't have something that they're asking for, just emphasize that you're a quick learner,
Mhm.
or that you know someone that did this and they showed you what they did, and you feel like you would take that approach as well.
Mhm.
Bring up an article that you read on it. There's something that you can pull from to answer the question in detail.
Yeah, there's definitely no wrong answers in an interview, but you definitely, like Tyrone said, you don't want to make something up on the spot. So even if it's, I personally haven't had to handle a situation like that, but here's something similar that I dealt with that could kind of showcase some of the skills that they're highlighting as opposed to that direct experience. That's always going to be something that you can pivot to as well.
Exactly. Yep. Absolutely.
All
That
right.
was
Well, that
fun.
was fun.
I like
Irene,
that.
I'm so appreciative of you being on again. I will have you on again in a couple of weeks. We're going to be doing
Yep.
some more interview prep discussion, this time a panel interview. So the two of us, and then another educator turned recruiter friend of mine, Shauna, is going to be joining us as well. So the three of us will give some insight in terms of how we prepare people for different stages of interviews, different types of interviews, since we're all kind of in different markets here. So just look forward to that in the coming weeks. But otherwise, have a great week ahead, and we'll talk to you next Monday.
Bye, everybody.